Hello, Twisted D4 here. I'm welcoming you to the next part of me reacting to horror stories videos on Patreon and or on YouTube. Um, I'm actually kind of happy I'm able to do it like this because I kind of explained it when I was screen recording one of my videos that very annoyingly, what I'd call very annoyingly, for whatever reason, YouTube was kind of just deciding to be like, you know what, we're just not gonna show, we're not gonna show you. I'm trying to think what's the proper, or what I would call the proper way of showing that. They decided, Screencastify and Adobe decided, you know what, we're not gonna work for you. We're not gonna work and help you trying to make your content look better. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm just rambling. Here we're gonna get into the first of I would call a two-part thing of Dark History, Death by Chimney. Two different. There's this, and then there's Death by Chimney Part. Dark History, Death by Chimney Part 2, which I will, obviously react to. I will say that on my original list, I got or my original video document of what videos I wanted to watch. I either got rid of a few links or I just got rid of some of the subjects entirely because I realized some of it's going to be a bit too brutal for me. And I feel like I can't really get away with showing a lot of that. Like, for example, one of them I'm going to talk about later was a live, we'll call, say, game ending that happened on live television on the LA freeway. If you know what I'm talking about, yeah, you understand what I'm talking about. And I don't want to, I feel like I shouldn't show that, so I'm going to do it or the way I think I'm going to do it is I'm just going to play it play the video out up until that point, and then I think at that moment, then I will stop the video and then go into reading about the man who the video is about. I think that's the way I want to do it, so that I don't know if it just wouldn't feel right, and I definitely couldn't get away. And if I age restricted it myself, I feel like I can't get away with that at all. So I would just, in my head, I would just prefer to not. I'd prefer to not do it like that. So, um, anyways, I should stop rambling. I have like almost 28 minutes I have to get through this stuff. So let's get into it.
In Great Britain, during the 18th and 19th centuries, chimneys became common in households, and in turn came a rise in the need for chimney sweepers and their apprentices known as climber boys. These climber boys were often small children under the age of 7 who were adopted from orphanages or purchased from impoverished parents that would sell their children for very little money to be under the guardianship of their new employer, referred to as the master sweep. These young children were forced to do very dangerous work that exposed them to hazardous environments that often left them with bone and lung diseases, as well as other serious injuries that would lead to death before they reached the age of adulthood. Chimney flues are a vertical passage, pipe, or duct inside chimneys that carry smoke out of homes and other structures. These tight spaces riddled with odd angles were often too small for adults to climb into, so that's why the chimney sweepers sought young boys and girls to travel through these smoke vents, cleaning soot and other debris as they went through. Around 6 years old was the preferred age for these climber boys, but it was not uncommon to see children as young as 3 and 4 being introduced to this laborious work. The job would often be considered done once the child reached the other end of the chimney opening, but this was much easier said than done. Many of the children would get stuck before reaching the other end, which could result in suffocation from a positional asphyxia or soot intake. Once a child was stuck, it was up to the master sweep to decide the best action to set them free. This could often lead to cruel practices such as tugging on the children with a rope that was tied around their leg until they were free. or requiring the assistance of a mason to remove bricks or stone from the area of the chimney where the young ones were thought to be stuck. These taskmasters in charge of the children would often get them to move through these narrow passages with threats or acts of violence, such as beatings or poking them with pins to get them moving. Sometimes these masters...
So factor that in. That obviously, so one, a lot of times it was too small for full-grown adults to climb into. So that's why they brought these kids from either or adopted them from orphanages, as horror story said, or from the parents suddenly being like, oh, or the parents not having enough money to take care of the child. It's like, oh, we'll let you take our 6-year-old, 7, 5, 4, 3-year-old child and put him in this dangerous situation. Yeah, go ahead and do that. So disgusting. Like, why the hell would the parents agree to this?
Master sweeps would light fires at the bottom of the chimneys to get the children to move to the other end and finish the job. Some believe this is where the term lighting a fire under your butt originated. The exposure to soot could lead to cancers, bone deformities, such as in the spine, and other ailments that would often lead to these children being left crippled or having their lives cut short. Kids fell to their deaths from the tops of the chimney or while crawling inside them. The passages could be so cramped and narrow that the children were forced to strip off their clothes and crawl through them on their knees and elbows while naked. They would start early in the day, sometimes at 2 in the morning, and be forced to walk in freezing weather that could kill them before working grueling hours, only to be beaten and tortured by their employers who would barely feed them. These are accounts from the book The Chimney Sweeper's Friend and Climbing Boys album by James Montgomery. Case 3. Extract from Public Ledger. Thursday, August 24th, 1809. An information was on Tuesday heard before the sitting magistrate at Bow Street against a master sweep, residing in the parish of Mary-le-Bonnet, for having in his service as an apprentice a child under the age of 8 years, contrary to the Act of Parliament for regulating ages of children apprenticed to that trade. The circumstances of this case were truly distressing, and exhibited an instance of human depravity scarcely to be equaled. It appeared that the mother of the child went some distance from London, and left her little son, a fine boy 5 years of age, under the care of his father, who is a working plumber named Miller. She remained out of town about a 12-month, and on her return ran with anxious hopes to the lodgings of her husband. But how great was her disappointment and misery when she was informed by the unnatural parent that, during her absence, he had the inhumanity to place his infant offspring in the service of a sweep, and thus early to expose his tender frame to all the melancholy vicissitudes so often experienced by the unfortunate children who are doomed to that employment. Her sensations may be more easily imagined than described. She rushed from the presence of her husband almost frantic, and with some difficulty found the den, for it could not be called a human habitation, where her infant, initiated into the horrid mysteries of chimney sweeping, was doomed to pass its existence without the fostering care of a parent, and subject to the barbarity of an inexorable master. The measure of her distress, however, was not yet full, for now she heard the horrid account that the father had absolutely sold the child for 3 guineas, which would total a little over $3, without the reproduction of which its equally unnatural master refused to restore it to the embraces of its distracted mother. The only recourse now left her was to apply to a solicitor for advice, who humanely took the cause in hand and summoned this master before the magistrates, who, without the least hesitation, ordered the child be restored to its mother and imposed a fine of £5 on the master. Case 4.
So right there, we've heard, let's just say in this instance, I've heard a case about, a child and their, being returned to the mother and being hurt but not being dead. Well, from how I remember, slight spoiler, it's not going to always end up that way where the child is able to get returned to a parent, and you'll see what I mean in a moment.
A boy named Sharpless, in the employ of Miss Whitfield, Littleshire Lane, Temple Bar, fell from the upper part of a chimney in July or August 1804 in Devereux Court. The chimney pot falling, or upper part of the chimney giving way, occasioned this accident. The boy had several bones fractured, and being carried to St. Bartholomew's Hospital, died there in a short time. Case 5. In the improvement made some years since the Bank of England in Lothbury, a chimney belonging to a Mr. Mildrum, a baker, was taken down. But before he began to bake, in order to see that the rest of the flue was clear, a boy was sent up, and, after remaining some time, he not answering to the call of his master, another boy was ordered to descend the top of the flue and to meet him halfway. But this being found impracticable, they opened the brickwork in the lower part of the flue and found the first mentioned boy dead. In the meantime, the boy in the upper part of the flue called out for relief, saying he was completely jammed in the rubbish and was unable to extricate himself. Upon this, a bricklayer was employed with the utmost expedition, but he succeeded only in obtaining a lifeless body. The bodies were sent to St. Margaret's Church, Lothbury, and a coroner's inquest which sat upon them returned the verdict, accidental death. Case.
Okay, so as you just heard and understanding, and you have visual here of someone trying to take, looks like a lifeless body of a child out from, either by or near the chimney. This is what I was referring to. Like, we just heard about two instances in the same case where where two children died. One who was initially sent up, who then stopped responding, and then the other one, after they got the first kid out and lifeless, they then tried to get the other one out, and it was also lifeless. So, like I said, you can see that this is a very a very difficult, uncomfortable situation to be dealing with. Obviously, not the greatest thing to be, having to understand or deal with and all that. So, yeah.
6. In the beginning of the year 1808, a chimney sweeper's boy, being employed to sweep a chimney in Marsh Street, Walthamstow, in the house of Mr. Jeffrey, carpenter, unfortunately in his attempt to get down, stuck in the flue, and was unable to extricate himself. Miss Jeffrey, being within hearing of the boy, immediately procured assistance. As the chimney was low, and the top of it easily accessible from without, the boy was taken out in about 10 minutes, the chimney pot and several rows of bricks having been previously removed. If he had remained in that dreadful situation many minutes longer, he must have died. His master was sent for, and he arrived soon after the boy had been released. He abused him for the accident, and after striking him, sent him with a bag of soot to sweep another chimney. The child appeared so very weak when taken out that he could scarcely stand, and yet this wretched being, who had been up ever since 3 o'clock, had before been sent to his master in Wanstead, which, with his walk to Marsh Street, made about 5 miles. Case 7. On Friday morning, February 16th, 1808, a climbing apprentice to Holland in East Street, Lambeth, was sent at 3 in the morning to sweep some chimneys at Norwood. The snow was so deep and the cold so extreme that a watchman used this remarkable expression, that he would not have sent even a dog out. The boy, having swept 2 chimneys, was returning home in company with another boy, but at length found the cold so excessive that he could go no further. After some little time, he was taken to the Half Moon public house at Dulwich, and died in the course of an hour. It was supposed that by proper care his life might have been preserved. The master sweep was brought to Union Hall, Southwark, by Mr. Bowles, the magistrate. Upon examining him, his principal fault appeared to be sending the boy out so early, and he was dismissed. Coroner's inquest was held upon the body, and a verdict was returned. Died from the inclemency of the weather. Case 10. On Monday morning, the 29th of March, 1813, a chimney sweeper of the name Griggs attended to sweep a small chimney in the brewhouse of Messrs. Calvert & Co. in Upper Thames Street. He was accompanied by one of his boys, a lad about 8 years of age, the name of Thomas Pitt. The fire had been lighted as early as 2 o'clock that same morning and was burning on the arrival of Griggs and his little boy at 8. The fireplace was small, and an iron pipe projected from the grate some little distance into the flue. This the master was acquainted with, having swept the chimneys in the brewhouse for some years, and therefore had a tile or two taken from the roof in order that the boy might descend the chimney. He had no sooner extinguished the fire than he suffered the lad to go down, and the consequence, as might be expected, was his almost immediate death, in a state, no doubt, of inexpressible agony. The flue was of the narrowest description, and must have retained heat sufficient to have prevented the child's return to the top, even supposing he had not approached the pipe belonging to the grate, which must have been nearly red hot. This, however, was not clearly ascertained on the inquest, though the appearance of the body would have induced an opinion that he had been unavoidably pressed against the pipe. Soon after his descent, the master, who remained on the top, was apprehensive that something had happened, and therefore desired him to come up. The answer of the boy was, "I cannot come up, master. I must die here." An alarm was given in the brewhouse immediately that he had stuck in the chimney, and a bricklayer, who was at work near the spot, attended, and after knocking down part of the brickwork of the chimney just above the fireplace, made a hole sufficiently large enough to draw him through. A surgeon attended, but all attempts to restore life were ineffectual. On inspecting the body, various burns appeared. The fleshy part of the legs, and a great part of the feet, more particularly, were injured. Those parts, too, by which climbing boys most effectually ascend or descend chimneys. The elbows and knees seemed burnt to the bone, from which it must be evident that the unhappy sufferer made some attempts to return as soon as the horrors of his situation became apparent. The jury, upon the view of the body, and after hearing evidence to the effect above stated, which engaged their serious deliberation for 2 days, returned the following special verdict: that the master was employed to clean a certain chimney at the brewhouse of Messrs. Calvert & Co., situate, and that he had set the deceased, an infant of about 8 years, to clean the said chimney for him. That deceased accordingly got into and descended said chimney for the purpose of cleaning the same, and that by the straightness and narrowness of the chimney, and by the heat thereof, a fire having just been in the grate thereof, the deceased was burned and hurt in divers parts of his body, and also by the foulness and unwholesomeness of the air in the said chimney. The deceased was suffocated, of which said burning, hurts, and suffocation, the deceased then and there died. And so the jurors, upon their oath, say that he died in the manner aforesaid, and by misfortune came to his death. Case 11.
Okay. I keep just saying wow, 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 but yeah, no, all I could say is wow. Like, there's seriously something so wrong with so many people. I'm not saying that lightly, mind you, when I say, that something's wrong with people, but, like, that's genuine. I do think there's genuinely something wrong with people. Sorry, I'll get back to the video, but for some reason I'm seeing this. Someone's commented. This was someone literally, for the reason, just commented on the video I just uploaded, like, I don't know, however many minutes ago. But for whatever, but for whatever reason, all I was reading and or seeing was it was a video. It was something completely unrelated that I'm just completely ignoring.
On Friday, the 31st of May, 1816, William Moles and Sarah, his wife, were tried at the Old Bailey for willful murder of John Hewley, alias Hazley, a boy about 6 years of age, in the month of April last by cruelly beating him. Under the direction of the learned judge, they were acquitted of the crime of murder, but the husband was detained to take his trial as for a misdemeanor, of which he was convicted upon the fullest evidence, and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment.
Okay, so that was another, or this was another short one. So, a husband and wife who were convicted of the murder of a 6-year-old child who they beat. I believe I assume beat to death, but they were acquitted of it. But then the husband was then given a different trial separate from his wife for charged with the misdemeanor, which he was fully, charged, convicted of by the evidence, and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. Okay, so all right.
Case 12. June 1816. A boy ascended a chimney in Albany Barracks while a fire was in the grate, and was so dreadfully burnt that he survived only a few hours. Case 7.
Okay, again another short one. Jesus, so like he was burned because there was a fire there previously, and yet for what I would call I'm saying for whatever reason they didn't try to make sure there wasn't a fire in there before setting him up. What the hell was their problem?
17. March 1817. A boy was sent up a chimney in Cumberland Street and in a slanting part, smothered by the falling soot. When dug out, he was quite dead.
Again, another short one. So they sent this child, in there. He was then smothered with soot that was falling in through the chimney, and by the time he was dug out, he was dead. So again, as I said, literally other than that one, I'd say one full-on instance of someone who being saved. The other ones are just, again, as it says in the title, death by chimney. So
Case 20. June. A boy was sent up a chimney in a house where a woman in a lower room was cooking. She accidentally set her chimney on fire, and the flames reaching the unfortunate sweep. He was dreadfully burnt, and after lingering 2 days, expired.
okay, as I said, sorry, I got distracted. Another case of literally, in this case, the lady claims she accidentally set the chimney on fire, and then unfortunately the poor kid burned alive in there. So yeah.
Case 21. A boy sent up a chimney in Edinburgh, stuck in a turn of the flue. The most barbarous means were used to drag him down, but it was found impracticable. After 7 hours, he was dug out, but quite dead.
So they tried to use some kind of barbarous, or what would be considered barbarous method to try to get him out, but that was found, as I said, impracticable. So it was literally not possible to even try. But obviously, by the time they got him out, he was dead. Jesus.
Case 22. A boy went up a flue in a gentleman's house in Bryanstone Street and was smothered by the falling soot. He was also taken out dead.
Again, another short one. Another kid sent to another place. Obviously, you factors in a lot of this is in England, and in the UK. So just horrible, horrible. You know,
Case 24. A boy went, a few weeks since, to sweep a chimney in Somers Street. He stuck fast, and his groans, after some time, led to his being dug out. But alas, too late. He appeared to have been partly smothered, and by the heat of the flue, partly burnt alive.
Okay, so slight differences in some cases, but other times quite the same. And obviously, in this case, it's again it was the heat of the flu, part of the being partly burnt alive while being stuck in a chimney. So
Case 25. At the Dublin sessions, T. Young, a master sweep, was indicted at the instance of Lord Mayor for extreme cruelty to his apprentice. The boy was examined on oath. In the arms of nurse, he appeared, from excessive torture, hardly able to speak. He said that he lived with the prisoner as an apprentice, that the prisoner used to burn straw and powder under him to make him go the chimneys quick, and used to pull him down by cord tied to his leg. It was this cruelty that caused sores, which prevented him from going up the chimneys when ordered. The prisoner has often thrown him into a tub of water in order to make his sores pain him. The evidence of the poor lad was corroborated by that of other witnesses, and the court sentenced the wretch to be whipped twice, at an interval of 2 months from the jail to the exchange, to be imprisoned 2 years, and also to be detained in custody till he gave 2 sureties of £25 each, and bound himself in £50. This sentence was received with evident satisfaction by the whole court. High Court of Justiciary, Edinburgh, 22nd of July, 1817. Case 26. Joseph Ray and Robert Reed, chimney sweepers, were charged with the murder of John Fraser, alias Thompson, a boy of 11 years of age.
So here, if you caught that, this is the first instance of someone not like 8, 7, 6, or 5, 3, 4, or whatever. This is an 11-year-old that they sent to die this horrible way.
An apprentice of the said Joseph Ray. The indictment also contained a charge that said Joseph Ray did previously evince a deadly malice and ill will against the said John Fraser, alias Thompson, by maltreating him and using him harshly on different occasions. The Lord Advocate deserted the diet against Reed, pro loco et tempore, and he was committed upon a new warrant. The counsel for Ray objected to the manner in which the charge of malice was introduced, and also of the want of specifications in that charge. The court repelled the objection. The panel pleaded not guilty. James Thompson, chimney sweeper. One day, in the beginning of June, witness and panel had been sweeping vents together. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the panel proposed to go to Albany Street, where the panel's brother was cleaning a vent, with the assistance of Fraser, whom he had borrowed from the panel for the occasion. When witness and panel got to the house in Albany Street, they found Fraser, who had gone up the vent between 11 and 12 o'clock, not yet come down. On entering the house, they found a mason making a hole in the wall. Panel said, "What was he doing? I suppose he has taken a lazy fit." The panel called to the boy, "What are you doing? What's keeping you?" The boy answered that he could not come. The panel worked a long while, sometimes persuading him, sometimes threatening and swearing at the boy to get him down. Panel then said, "I will go to a hardware shop and get a barrel of gunpowder and blow you and the vent to the devil if you do not come down."
Okay, that's extreme on multiple levels, because you're the stupid motherfuckers who got him stuck up there. That's not really, I'd argue, that's not really his fault that he's I don't know. Am I wrong for thinking that seems a bit ridiculous to be getting mad at him? For the fact that you're the ones who put him up there.
Panel then began to slap at the wall. Witness then went up a ladder and spoke to the boy through a small hole in the wall previously made by the mason, but the boy did not answer. Panel's brother told Witness to come down, as the boy's master knew best how to manage him. Witness then threw off his jacket and put a handkerchief around his head and said to the panel, "Let me go up the chimney to see what's keeping him." The panel made no answer, but pushed Witness away from the chimney and continued bullying the boy. At this time, the panel was standing on the grate so that Witness could not go up the chimney. Witness then said to Panel's brother, "There is no use for me here," meaning that Panel would not permit him to use his services. He prevented the mason making the hole larger, saying, "Stop, and I'll bring him down in 5 minutes' time." Witness then put on his jacket and continued an hour in the room, during which time Panel continued bullying the boy. Panel then desired Witness to go to Reed's house to get the loan of his boy Allison. Witness went to Reed's house and asked Reed to come and speak to Panel's brother. Reed asked if Panel was there. Witness answered he was. Reed said he would send his boy to the panel, but not to the panel's brother. Witness and Reed went to Albany Street, and when they got into the room, Panel took his head out of the chimney and asked Reed if he could lend him his boy. Reed agreed. Witness then returned to Reed's house for his boy, and Reed called after him, "Fetch down a set of ropes with you." By this time, Witness had been 10 minutes in the room, during which time Panel was swearing and asking what's keeping you, you scoundrel. When Witness returned with the boy and ropes, Reed took hold of the rope, and having loosed it, gave Allison one end and directed him to go up the chimney, saying, "Do not go farther than his feet, and when you get there, fasten it to his foot." Panel said nothing all this time. Allison went up. Having fastened the rope, Reed desired him to come down. Reed took the rope and pulled, but did not bring down the boy. The rope broke. Allison was sent up again with the other end of the rope, which was fastened to the boy's foot. When Reed was pulling the rope, Panel said, "You have not the strength of a cat." He took the rope into his own hands, pulling as strong as he could. Having pulled about a quarter of an hour, Panel and Reed fastened the rope round a crowbar, which they applied to the wall as a lever, and both pulled with all their strength for about a quarter of an hour longer, when it broke. During this time, Witness heard the boy cry and say, "My God Almighty." Panel said, "If I had you here, I would God Almighty you." Witness thought the cries were in agony. The master of the house brought a new piece of rope, and the Panel's brother spliced an eye on it. Reed expressed a wish to have it fastened on both thighs, to have greater purchase. Allison was sent up for this purpose, but came down, and said he could not get it fastened. Panel then began to slap at the wall. After striking a long while at the wall, he got out a large stone. He then put in his head and called to Fraser, "Do you hear, you sir?" but got no answer. He then put in his hands and threw down deceased's breeches. He then came down from the ladder. At this time, the Panel was in a state of perspiration. He sat down on a stool, and the master of the house gave him a dram. Witness did not hear Panel make any remarks as to the situation of the boy Fraser. Witness thinks that from the Panel's appearance, he knew the boy was dead. Reed's wife came to get her husband away to a job, and the Panel went with him. This was between 6 and 7 o'clock. Panel's brother enlarged the hole, but still could not get in. Witness then went in with difficulty. He found Fraser lying on his belly, with his hand stretched above his head. He was lying at a turn in the vent, and his head was jammed at the head of the turn, had a towel about his head, and a shirt all about his neck. Witness tore off the shirt bit by bit and threw it on the floor, then brought down the boy. There was a little heat in the body, got spirits and washed the boy's temples, but in vain. Witness went for Dr. Poole, who came and applied a bellows, but in vain. Witness knew the deceased 12 months past in May, used to come to Witness's house. Witness always gave him a piece or a half-penny. Boy complained that his master used to starve him, strike him, and use him badly. Witness stopped in prisoner's house for some time in May 1816. One Saturday night, heard Panel's wife say, "You are done now. There's your ladder and materials away." whereupon panel made the deceased strip himself. Boy applied to witness to save him. Witness asked panel to forgive him. Panel said if it were God Almighty himself speaking from the heavens, he would not forgive him. The boy was told to strip himself perfectly naked. Panel beat him on the back with the single end of a sweep's ropes, apparently with all his strength. The boy cried much. About 10 o'clock at night, the panel took the boy to a back room and made him go naked up and down the chimney till 1 o'clock Sunday morning. Panel afterwards acknowledged that the ladder and materials were in the house all the time. Boy was a fine boy. Witness has stuck in a vent himself, but never saw ropes used. Did not remonstrate, because boy's master was the principal. The mason said that panel was killing the boy, and that he could get him aid, but was hindered by the panel. Witness thinks that the expressions used by the panel to the boy while in the vent were from revenge. Panel seemed in anger at the boy. Did not hear deceased speak after panel had left the house. James Stalker, publican and grocer in Albany Street, in most respects corroborated the preceding witness. He stated that before panel left the house, the witness said to him, "Sir, you have killed him." And either Reed or panel said it was not the case. It was the boy's cunningness. Witness again said he might depend upon it he had killed him. Panel said it was not the case. He would not wonder if he were in a faint. John Cameron and James Steele, porters, also corroborated the statements of the preceding witnesses. James Allison, apprentice to Robert Reed, a boy of 11 years of age, stated that he had fastened the rope to Fraser's leg by the direction of the panel. Examined by the prisoner's counsel, as known deceased remained a long time in vents when he might have come down. Once in Gayfield Square, witness and deceased were both sent up to clear a vent. Witness went up first, and deceased followed, but deceased would not come down till another boy was sent for to take him down. Upon this occasion, he kept witness in the vent from 7 in the evening till near 3 next morning. Witness has known him stay long in other vents. Thomas Marwood lived in panel's house along with deceased. Saw panel tie deceased to a chest, gag his mouth with a stick, and beat him with ropes till the blood came, and then put saltpeter on him. Has seen panel make deceased eat the vilest offal. James Bryce, surgeon, was sent for to examine the body of the deceased 36 hours after his death. Found some abrasions on the skin in the front of the breast. No particular appearance on the face. No contusions, no fracture. Greater mobility in the neck than would have been expected so long after death. As first, suppose this mobility might proceed from dislocation, or a fracture of the deltoid process. Dissected the muscles from the bones of the neck. Discovered no fracture of the bones, then severed the head from the body, and found the deltoid process in its place perfectly entire. Thinks the death must have happened in one of 3 ways. First, by the head getting into a certain angle with the neck and permitting such a pressure on the spinal marrow as to prove fatal. Second, all the clothes getting round the head and producing suffocation. Third, the clothes were getting round the neck and being attached to some stone in the vent and producing strangulation from the force applied below. Dr. Farquharson stated, in addition to the above, that he observed the skin off one of the legs, as if occasioned by a ligature. Dr. Poole corroborated the above statement. He also described the situation of the deceased an hour after the body was taken from the vent. The jaw was firmly locked. Uncommon facility of motion of the neck, had no doubt that forcible extraction of the body had produced some fatal effect on the neck. Concurred in the 3 modes mentioned by Mr. Bryce, but declined giving any opinion as to which of them caused the death. The Lord Advocate addressed the jury on behalf of the Crown, and had no doubt but that they would return a verdict of guilty. Mr. M. Neal addressed the jury on behalf of the prisoner, and contended that the evidence failed to make out a case of murder. Verdict: culpable homicide. Panel transported for 14 years. In 1788, the Chimney Sweepers Act raised the legal age of climbing boys to 8 years old. But as you can tell from the previous tales, these laws were often ignored and not enforced by authorities, so the abuse of young children continued. In 1834, the minimum age was raised to 10 years old, but it had little effect, and the cruelty to children continued. In 1875, the minimum age was raised to 21 and required all chimney sweeps to be registered with the police, which effectively ended the practice of climbing boys and using young children in this dangerous line of work.
Alrighty. So that appears to be the end of it. Or yeah, what I'd say is the end of it. So yeah, I hope you all did enjoy. Hope you all did enjoy the video. And yeah, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and you check out the rest of my content and rest of the 4 stories. All right, bye.